Welcome back to the Case Foundation's Facebook Live studio at the TechCo and Kauffman Foundation American Cities House at South by Southwest. I am so fortunate to be joined here by Brian Brackeen, who is the founder and CEO of Kairos, based in Miami, Florida. Brian, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
We have an exciting day here of entrepreneurs, ecosystem builders, and investors. You are our first entrepreneur to sit down with today. Okay. So not, no pressure, just putting all of it on your shoulders.
Raise the bar for me.
Tell us everything that you know about entrepreneurship. But why don't we start by talking a little bit more about what Kairos does and what the company is built around.
Sure. Thanks for having me. This is an amazing opportunity. I love the work you guys do.
Thank you.
I was sitting here realizing as well that I've seen you probably 4 or 5 times now, each time in a different city. So you're always kind of
It's the Inclusive Entrepreneurship Roadshow. We go wherever there are entrepreneurs.
Rise of the rest, right?
Exactly.
So my name's Brian Brackeen, CEO of Kairos. We're a facial recognition company based in Miami, Florida. We do facial recognition mostly for companies versus governments. So we help retailers understand their customer. We can tell who someone is. We could also tell their age, gender, ethnicity, and emotions. Our accuracy kind of gets close to about 100%. So we're very, very strong in these areas. And now we're starting to do the same things for things like blockchain.
So why is that valuable for companies who want to use facial recognition? I mean, I can understand why, knowing your customer helps companies to, direct particular products to them. But how does that translate into facial recognition, and what types of companies are you finding kind of understand the value of that?
Yeah, we believe that we have a thesis that it's all about knowing your customer, right? If you can better serve someone in this world of really customization and personalization, that's the only way to win in the future. Companies that are personalizing their products for their customers will be the only ones that survive, essentially. And so you think about like an Amazon or a Netflix that knows what you want to watch or what you should watch. People are going to expect that in the real world as well. So examples of that would be go into a retailer and there's a sign, and I'll see a Nike men's shoe. That same sign will show you a Nike woman's shoe, right? Just purely based on understanding our age or our gender, right? So these are the kinds of the things that really make sense or really matter for our customers.
Mm-hmm. And you are based in the lovely city of Miami, which you were recently telling me has the highest number of co-working spaces for entrepreneurs. So any entrepreneurs out there, Miami is open for business for you. Come on down. But why Miami? Why were you founded there, and why have you stayed there?
I really kind of strongly believe that Miami is the -- city for early stage entrepreneurs in the country. There's a variety of reasons. We look at this scientifically when we decided to start the company there. In California, for instance, there's one angel investor for every 3 startups. In Florida, there are 3 angel investors for every 1 startup. So
that is a much more favorable ratio for you.
It is. And especially in the beginning, capital is super important, right? But also there's all this creativity. About 8,000 people a month move to Miami, and a large number of them are highly educated and entrepreneurial, which is why we have the highest. Kauffman Foundation says that we are the #1 startup city in the country. The highest population of people that start companies is in Miami, and that's why we have so many co-working spaces, 59 for a city our size.
Wow, that's incredible. And speaking of the angel investors, I had the opportunity to kind of pop in on a meeting that you were wrapping up with an angel investor just this morning. And, it made me think about what are some of the best attributes that you look for in investors. We talk about venture capital as kind of the jet fuel that funds and really cares for entrepreneurship in this country, but it's always more than just money, right? And so when you're looking for those relationships and when you're looking for investors or other support organizations, like what do you look for as an entrepreneur?
For us, we're a B2B business, so oftentimes entrepreneurs that become investors are great investors for us. They have great connections. They've kind of been through the grind, right? And they've made connections that can help our company to grow. So connections are certainly big, but also people who are really honest and open about the pain of entrepreneurship and can share in an empathetic way what we're going through or what I'm going through as a founder and help me to navigate those kind of difficult waters.
So speaking of some of those difficult waters, we had worked together last year on a piece that you wrote for our Faces of Founders platform called I'm Not Black Enough for Inc. magazine. Yes. And it came out of some conversations that we had around the ways that the experiences that the African American community has in entrepreneurship are portrayed and expressed. And both the importance of being really open and honest about the experiences entrepreneurs are having, but also not painting with a wide brush, right? Of saying, well, all African American entrepreneurs experience this, or all women entrepreneurs experience that. So what has your experience as an entrepreneur been like, and how does that translate into lessons learned for various communities of entrepreneurs out there?
Yeah, the premise of that piece that I wrote was about, I was followed around for a number of months by Inc. magazine, and they were looking to profile an entrepreneur of color that had had kind of a successful experience. And the story was ultimately killed because I didn't fit the archetype of the black entrepreneur, because my parents are married, we were middle class growing up, and I didn't have that kind of rags to riches, rose in the sidewalk, kind of experience, I guess they were looking for. They wanted me, I suppose, to be, in a different situation. And so the piece is about, the average African American actually is middle class. The average African American, particularly African American women, are highly educated. And that perpetrating this narrative over and over in the world that African Americans are kind of poor, or this one person was so lucky to have been successful, I think is hurtful and harmful. And you look at a movie like Black Panther, where we're telling kind of the stories of really positive and successful people of color. And you have, a scientist who's a woman, and she's my favorite character in the whole film, right? I think that's the one, it's not just the narrative we should be telling, but two, it's also the truth.
Absolutely. And just acknowledging that, every entrepreneur has a different background. And, this idea of, all of the quintessential entrepreneurs have been white men who dropped out of college and started something by themselves in a garage, with their roommates, dad's money, is both not an accurate portrayal of what entrepreneurship actually looks like in our country, and also not a sustainable thing for most people to aspire to. So I think that this idea of breaking down all of the archetypes around entrepreneurship and saying, start by understanding where an entrepreneur is coming from. And if you're an investor or an ecosystem builder around there, start by figuring out what actually is important to you. Is it the person? Is it the business idea? Is it where they're founding the business? If you're trying to start up an ecosystem like what's happening in Miami, is it, the types of returns that you'll get as an investor? But really figure out what that is, and also check your own biases. Because I think that, you definitely saw some biases on the part of the reporters who you were working with. We've seen biases on, the standpoint of investors who are saying, well, all of the great successful businesses that I've invested in have been founded by people who have the same background as me. So I know that those businesses will make me money, which I can understand how that happens. But that is a bias, and that is holding back people who didn't go to the top tier universities, or who, didn't have the same kind of upbringing as others. Not that that means that they are less qualified to be entrepreneurs. It just means that they're coming from a different perspective, and that can be actually really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And people's backgrounds play a role as to why they didn't go to a school like that. So we just recently hired an amazing woman. Her name is Alessandra Zul. She scored high, and she's like a Mensa certified genius, essentially, right? And has gotten to a school even she was mentally tested at 3 years old and found to be that. But Alessandra didn't go to Stanford, right? Didn't go to MIT, because in Miami it's much more common to stay closer. She's Venezuelan. She speaks English and Spanish. She's more comfortable in that environment. She went to UM, an amazing school. And so an investor might see her and say, she doesn't look like Mark Zuckerberg. She's not the Harvard dropout. She could be smarter than Mark Zuckerberg, right? But
no offense, Mark Zuckerberg.
Exactly. No offense. You're a bright guy, Mark. I believe in you. Don't cut off the Facebook live stream. But she won't necessarily get that chance. And so we need to tell her story more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will, take a quick plug on, if you're looking for more stories of diverse entrepreneurs who are out there building businesses right now, check out facesoffounders.org, where you can read more about Brian's article on I'm Not Black Enough for Inc. magazine, and some of the entrepreneurs like Alessandra. We need to get Alessandra's story up there as well. That's a good to do for us. But before we wrap today, I actually want our last topic of conversation to be something that, I will be honest that I am still in a little bit of learning mode around But you just did a really interesting alternative raise for your company. Instead of doing, what were you at, like a Series A or a Series B now? You're no longer a young startup.
I don't fit the demographic.
That is really exciting. But instead of doing a typical Series B round, you looked to the ICO market. And can you explain for our audience a little bit of what that is and why you chose to go more into the cryptocurrency world instead of standard VC?
Sure. And ICO stands for Initial Coin Offering. And so what companies are now doing is, with this crypto world, they're creating coins for the company and putting them out there and saying to the world, this is who we are, this is what we believe in, do you want to kind of invest in this? Now, the problem is, traditionally, these coins have been really non-SEC compliant. And for us, we've already accepted investor monies. We couldn't just put a coin out there and have a whole different kind of really illegal approach toward fundraising. And so what we did was we created what we call a security coin or security token. This is for equity in the business. And we're following all the SEC rules around equity in the business. And for us, it's just another round, just another offering. But now, instead of going to a venture capital groups, we have some venture capitalists investing in this. We're kind of putting out there for the world. And thousands and thousands of people who are interested in investing. We were able to raise a large amount of money in a very short amount of time. And it really just shows, we've more than kind of tripled the amount we've been able to take in. And it shows that the world is looking for companies like ours, is looking for great ideas. And the old model wasn't providing companies like Kairos the capital it needed to grow. And now the new model will.
And it seems like it's really fulfilling some of the dreams of the Jobs Act when it first laid out this idea of equity-based crowdfunding in online spaces for accredited investors, right? It gives people the opportunity to say, maybe I am not a, multi-million-dollar investor yet, but I want to get my toe in the water. But you've seen some of that, but you've also seen some pretty significant investments. Do you have a wide variety of some of the, more kind of entry-level investors and some of the larger investors?
Yeah, we're taking mostly accredited investors, right? But they're all from all over the world, right? And so you're seeing people get an opportunity to invest, and positive or negative, right? It could go down, could go up, but they're having an opportunity to invest, and they're from a place like, Zimbabwe or South Africa, or you name it, right? And so this idea that people from other countries can invest in companies that they believe in all around the globe, and then they will be enriched, and kind of the peer-to-peer nature of ICO versus the everyone winner-takes-all approach of traditional venture capital and the kind of the West Coast model, we'll call it, right? Has a democratization effect, right? And if we can make a little bit of money for a lot more people, it's better for society and for the world.
And incredibly valuable when you're starting your company in Miami, even with all of those angel investors out there.
Absolutely, because when we look at investors from other countries as well, they're less likely to see race. What they see is Americans are really clever and ingenious, and they want to invest in American companies. And so they see me as an American entrepreneur, not necessarily an African-American entrepreneur, what have you. And it's a subtle but big difference.
That's a complete reframing of how we're looking at entrepreneurship, which is going to be really important for the inclusive entrepreneurship movement to succeed. Well, Brian, thank you so much for taking the time here today. We're going to come back in just a few minutes with our next round of interviews for you. We have a few other really fantastic entrepreneurs coming up on the slate today, and a few ecosystem builders and investors later this afternoon. So, Brian, thank you, and we look forward to being back with you on Facebook Live in just a little bit.
Thank you.